We'll wait
The
till
state was
afterwards.
because we weren't, it wasn't.
Hot wire. Hot wire up there.
Yeah.
They get bit once and that's it. Or barbed wire.
Hey, I saw you going to work the other.
Oh, I was coming home from work and I saw you guys. I was gonna pull over. That bicyclist was coming the other way and then I thought I was gonna run up and get fuel and I was gonna catch you guys. I gone a different route.
Yeah, get even further. Yeah, it's been a shortened trip.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was gonna at least stop.
You can put one of those like, or the TV.
And then that bicyclist kind of balled it all up. And
Those electric ones work though, or the propane ones?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I keep an eye on the mayor when he goes to work and late today.
We'll go ahead and call this meeting, this evening's meeting to order. And we will begin as we do with our land acknowledgement statement. The Chinookan peoples known as the Clackamas and Cascades are the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The village of Nechakli was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these peoples included a seasonal round of resource gathering and stewardship from the Wapato Fields and fishing area of the Columbia River to the cedar and huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced disease from early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. And we acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by the collective work of many Native nations, leaders, and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. And we are honored to be guests upon these lands. Now we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. If you haven't been here before, the flag's behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And next on the agenda is opening the floor for citizen comment on non-agenda items. And Greg's working on the volume now, but I understand he does have one comment to read into the record.
Thank you, Mayor. And it wasn't a comment directly towards the council, but it was a general comment that came in regarding our banners that we place at our gateway signs for our events and other special notifications. I won't repeat word for word what the community member said, but essentially the placement is less than optimal as it blocks the sign. And the point of bringing it up to tonight is just to remind everyone that we are looking at redesigning those gateway signs as they're kind of falling, not into disrepair, but more rot is developing and, they're older and time for a replacement. So as part of that replacement, the idea is how can better facilitate community messaging that doesn't block the sign, but then is easier to facilitate putting up banners both for our team members and to the community.
Can I make I'm sitting up here, but somewhat just a citizen's observation at this point when we're talking about signs. The sign down here, and I just noticed this about 2 weeks ago, the sign that is on the park property as you're coming west, that is really hard to see. It is really difficult. And the fact is, I think that may be the first time I've recognized that sign.
It's been up there for several years and the original plans had it to be some stone around it, some planting and potentially backlit. So, evening times it would backlit from the backside. It's just been one of those projects to finish it. not a lot of easy pathways for it, but
Yeah. Well, anyway, I just thought, wow, I haven't seen that sign before.
Yeah,
It's
that's-
just, you know, it's dark. And I don't know whether you can do something just on the back of the letters, put a color that would then show through where it's been plasma cut. Might be able to even see that sign because it's a cool looking
it's a
sign,
cool sign.
but you know, it's just hard to see it. Anyway, I live at
You know,
22969 Orata Road.
And we'd be remiss while we're talking about that sign if we didn't once again thank Advanced Metal and Wire and Jim Mott for creating that sign for the city.
Creating and donating it.
That's nice.
All right, next up then is the consent calendar. Does anybody?
Was
have
there
any-
a citizen comment from our?
Oh, I'm sorry. No. I invited her. I know why she's here. All right, thank you. All right. And since I failed to do so, we'll go ahead and close the floor then, and then we'll consider the consent calendar. Does anybody have any questions or comments at all about the consent calendar? All right, I'd entertain then a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And next up on our agenda is a presentation from the Joint Office on Homeless Services. Before we get there, I'd like to thank Chair Kafori for being on the call tonight virtually. Taylor Steenblock from the county I can't see every block. Is Commissioner Stegman on the call yet?
She's in the parking lot.
Okay, so Commissioner Stegman will be in soon. And then also Taylor Steenblock and our presenter Shannon Singleton from the Joint Office. Go ahead when you're ready, Shannon.
Before Shannon speaks, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, I would just wanted to say a couple of words to the council. First of all, to apologize for not being there in person tonight, but also just to thank you so much for inviting our team to come talk with you about this very important issue. And I know that there's been a lot of ongoing conversations, but please, my message to all of you is, you know, there's a lot of information here. And if we're not able to get all of your questions answered tonight, please feel free to reach out to my office, to Taylor, and we'll get you any more information that you need, because one thing we have is a lot of data. Thank you so much again for having us tonight.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to introduce our interim director of the Joint Office of Homeless Services, Shannon Singleton.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm just going to screen share here one moment so you can see the presentation. Can folks see that?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much. My name is Shannon Singleton. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the interim director of the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Appreciate you all making space for me on your agenda tonight, and I'll try to go quickly, but still be thorough so that we have some time for discussion at the end. So the agenda for tonight, just brief context setting. I will share a little bit more about our racial equity and geographic equity lens, overview of some of the history of investments in East County, and then dive a little bit deeper into the investments in fiscal year 23 and some of the work moving forward. So just a little bit for the context setting, the Joint Office, what we do is create pathways to permanent homes for people experiencing homelessness. And what we don't do is enforce municipal codes or address criminal activity. Looking at our market, we always like to remind folks that we have these huge market pressures on people who are either we're trying to prevent from falling into homelessness or who have challenges exiting homelessness once they fall there. I want to particularly call your attention to the pie chart. This talks about extremely low income renter households. Our 34% here, the largest number, are in the labor force. And to ground truth this a little bit, this is folks who are our food prep workers, our restaurant wait staff, our personal care attendants, and our agricultural workers. We also have then 28% who are seniors, 23% who are folks with disabling conditions. So just to give that context, we have people in our extremely low income category, so those making under 30% of area median income are a large portion of those households. You can see in this middle chart here that they are also those who are tend to be rent burden. If you look again at the chart over to the far right, this is extremely low income. So those folks I was just talking about who face a rent burden, 87% of them and 76% face a severe cost burden. And then next to them is our very low income category. Our blue bar, again, 80% of those folks who are cost burden, 36% who are facing serious cost burden. And for some context, the folks in this type of category, according to the census data, include our cooks, our stock clerks, groundskeepers, janitors, retail workers, health aides, and warehouse workers, as well as customer service reps. Some data from more locally for fiscal year 2022. This is a data point that the Joint Office has been sharing over the past year or so. We have 6,440 people who have touched the homeless services system for the first time in 2 years. I want to be really clear to caveat this. It doesn't mean that they're all first-time homeless. This is not something we can disaggregate from first-time homeless, from those who may have been homeless before, but have never accessed services, nor for those who may have been homeless, moved back into housing and are now touching the system again after 2 years. But this is a significant increase of about 38% from our fiscal year 21 number. At the same time, we moved over 4,500 people back into permanent housing. And I'm sure you have seen our January 2022 point in time count numbers of about 5,228 people experiencing homelessness, both sheltered and unsheltered, in January of 2022. This just helps us understand the cyclical components around homelessness. It's not necessarily the stagnant population. We keep housing more people, and we continue to have folks that fall into homelessness due to some of those market pressures we were discussing on the last slide. A little bit about our equity work. Again, this is not news to you all. As part of our work with the SHS measure, it really emphasizes the call on the county to center Black, Indigenous, Native, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Asian, Pacific Islanders, and other people of color who are overrepresented in those experiencing homelessness. Even further centering at the core of that is people with lived experience of homelessness. When we think about geographic equity, we really are looking at, again, how do we increase access to services in East Multnomah County? Both looking at data and historic knowledge, but through our engagement with community stakeholders, really asking for attention to East County when we were working on our SHS local implementation plan. I'll talk more about that in a later slide. We continue to have systemic barriers for those investments. There has just been that lack of investment for East County and lack of infrastructure over time. And then additionally, as I mentioned, this last bullet here on our advisory bodies, we've been very intentional around outreach to folks in East County to engage in the application processes for our advisory bodies. On our continuum of care board, we have about 10% who identify as East County residents, and on our SHS implementation body or SHS advisory committee, we have 16% of folks who identify as being in East County. And additionally, we want to do another round of outreach for business community members, and Commissioner Stegman's office has been great and supplying some context for us for some recent work they have done with East County businesses. This is just a quick kind of snapshot so you can see. Obviously, we had a huge increase in funding that was able to happen between fiscal years 21 and fiscal year 22. This represents a 357% increase in East County investments due to the SHS measure, and then a slight increase again over that into fiscal year 23 of an additional 13%. I will go through these briefly. I think much of these early investments in 2019 and 2020, again, no surprise to you all, a lot of these were centered in Gresham. This is something that we're working to make sure we're expanding, that it's not just focused on Gresham as we continue our work. But you can see that there's been investments in outreach, in shelter, in employment programs, as well as supportive housing. I think one program of note in the supportive housing, both in fiscal year 2019 and 2020, is the Willow Tree Project, which serves families. And there's a specific mention about that it's Gresham and unincorporated areas of Multnomah County who have high barriers to overcoming homelessness. The project includes rent assistance as well as case management and some other types of client assistance like transportation support and things of that nature. Fiscal year 21, again, pretty similar type level of investment, about 2.45 million going into East County services, same bucket, shelter, outreach, navigation, employment, and that supportive housing project. And just a quick snapshot of some of the outcomes that have happened over that time. You'll notice in the Center 1 and emergency shelter in fiscal year 21, we see a drop in the folks who are served in shelter. This is because of COVID capacity restrictions start to show up. So just to name that, we had definitely an impact, not only in our shelter system, but as you'll see in outreach and navigation services for people who were trying to exit homelessness, particularly early in the pandemic. So fiscal year 2022, when we hit a higher level of investment into East County, again, you can see some of these specific call outs around East County navigation and outreach. One particular point of note is in one of probably my first or second meeting, Greg would be able to remind me, there was a request for some specific attention for navigation staff assigned to East County. So that was something I was able to work with my team to implement in April and May. And they specifically are a team of 3 people dedicated to serve East County, working in close partnership with the HOPE team to reach those folks who aren't showing up and walking in asking for services to make sure we're hitting some of those harder to reach camps. Additionally, I will just name our shelters in particular for families operate through a centralized system. So this will serve families regardless of their geographic location. We were able to increase the family shelter at Rockwood CDC to an additional 30 units in this fiscal year 22. I'm sorry, for fiscal year 23. And so we'll be able to serve more families through that work. And additionally, of course, during severe weather, whether that's heat or extreme cold events, we have severe weather shelters that we stand up in East County as well. And then I think you all are familiar with Cultivate initiatives, but some new investments in 22 around their employment programs and some of the mobile hygiene work that they have done as well. Outcomes for 22, we just see, again, these numbers are a little bit muted as we start to come out of COVID restrictions. We continue to have COVID cases within our congregate shelters. So the capacity tends to fluctuate, but we are working to find and stand up a new facility for them to send folks to if they need those isolation from any communicable disease that can show up in our congregate settings. So fiscal year 23, this is our current fiscal year. Again, just highlighting the East County navigation team. We also had some dollars specifically dedicated for shelter for East County. So we are actively pursuing a site for a congregate shelter setting. And then there's an additional requested investment that we are seeking for alternative shelter. So think of the villages or those pod shelters is something that has been highlighted as an additional need for East County. And then again, supported housing and employment program investments as well. I really just wanted you to see a snapshot of some of the work, some of the medical support you'll see. This is the Cultivate Initiative mobile shower and hygiene. They do some amazing work around the trash cleanup. Just a brief example for you to see some of those different pieces of the work. So what are some of the next steps? Our SHS plan, local implementation plan, had a lot of engagement for folks, over 70 engagement sessions with local advisory bodies, behavioral health and addiction providers, culturally specific providers, our general public engagements, emergency response partners, internal joint office staff who have experience in the field, as well as our different systems of care. So this is all our providers who serve families, domestic violence survivors, youth, as well as our adult systems, and then various community stakeholder meetings. East County groups surveyed included East Portland Action Plan, Gresham Neighborhood Coalition, and Business for a Better Portland, as well as Central Eastside Industrial Council. These in particular, there was a survey, the community that was surveyed identified East County as an area in great need of additional support, and particularly with the ability to move folks out of homelessness and back into housing with rent assistance and support services. Moving forward, we have a specific goal in our local implementation plan to conduct an assessment of East County services and provide recommendations for additional investments. So first, we'll start with reviewing the information that was gathered while completing our local implementation plan. We'll also conduct an analysis of service provision, again, across the board on from shelter and outreach to really take a look at what is out there and what people are accessing. Looking at some analysis of data that is disaggregated by race, and then really working again with our supportive housing services advisory body to do some work with what materials we already have, find the gaps, and help us continue to do that assessment and analysis. We meet monthly with multiple city managers from East County cities. We'll engage there, and I hope then you all will also be engaged through that to make sure that we're getting a wide range of stakeholder input as we go to put forward recommendations for any additional East County investments. The Joint Office has a couple of other advisory bodies like folks with lived experience and our equity committee. And of course, we'll also include some advice from them as well as we're looking to put this plan together. And I will stop there and hopefully left some time for discussion.
Thank you for the presentation. If you had an opportunity to look at the staff report, then you would have known quite a lot of the questions that were coming, and we'll get started on those. But I want to start by being just a little distressed about how we consider East County groups and who we're helping and or who we're working with, and 3 of the 5 are Portland, and none of them are from Troutdale or Wood Village or Fairview. And so, you know, it's hard to imagine an East County without us, but it seems like the Joint Office is. And so when you provide the assessment of how you're going to pick those groups in the future, we'd like to see who you may have considered from the 3 cities.
So that's not entirely accurate. I was sharing what was done through the SHS implementation, but my bullet points after that were clearly about including not only the city managers, but also you all as folks who can help to provide the information for that assessment. So I think it's important to highlight that.
It's another question that we added to our list after we did the staff report, and that's that, you know, you mentioned the 4 city managers meeting, and our question was actually more of a statement, and that's that we hope that there won't be another 4 city managers meeting that isn't attended by the Joint Office on Homelessness. Homelessness is a serious issue that that's pressing on all of the cities, and we want to play a role in taking care of it, but we also don't want 4 city managers showing up to twiddle their thumbs.
Absolutely. And with all due respect, I think all folks have missed meetings. And so that's something that we have all chatted about, of continuing to provide that space of trust for each other and understanding that there may be times that people miss meetings, and how can they still be productive and move forward anyway.
Sure. Well, and it's tough to be productive and move forward anyway without somebody there. So maybe if a person, you know, high on the pecking order is going to miss the meeting, then they, you know, call and tell people, and they find somebody to take their place so that some discussion can still occur. And then we'll go ahead and start with the questions then that were in the staff report. And the first one is about the Behavioral Health Resource Center, which I believe I saw an announcement that it had opened or was close to the grand opening, but it was scheduled for the fall. And so if it hasn't opened yet, just want to check on that schedule. And then also have you talk about the 2023 plans for it also to be a shelter with some transitional housing, and if you're still on pace for that.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll take that question. The Joint Office has been involved with this, but it's also been a county-wide effort with a particular focus on the Health Department and the Behavioral Health Division at the Health Department, who really have put the plans together for this facility. So it has not opened yet. We are actually having the grand opening ribbon cutting on November the 16th. I will make sure that, Taylor, if you could make sure that we get an invitation to all of the members of the City Council. We have not sent those out yet. We've been doing meetings with folks who, businesses who are right around the neighborhood where the Behavioral Health Resource Center is going to be located, and also with peers, with health specialists. And then we'll be doing the grand opening ribbon cutting. So the facility, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into about it, but the first section that's going to be opening this fall is going to be just the ground floor, which is a day center. And that is, this program is specifically for homeless folks who have behavioral health issues. And it's going to be a peer-run facility. So there's not a clinical focus to get people to come in to get connected to services, but also just to get a warm place to call their mom, to get a sandwich, just relax, take a shower, do laundry, and then engage with peers who have that lived experience, who can relate to the situations that they're going through. Early in this next spring of 2023, we will be opening the emergency overnight shelter, and then the top floor, which is a transitional housing for a longer stay for people who maybe are coming out of a program and still need some time to stabilize. And those will have more of a clinical focus, but still with the addition of the peer services. We're very excited. This is going to be a unique model. It was been entirely developed with peers so that we really are focusing on what helps get people inside and connected to services, as opposed to what practitioners believe is the right thing for people.
Thank you very much for that. We're excited for it too. There was a full sort of deeper point in time count report promised for release during this past summer. And as far as we know, it hasn't been released yet. Do you know when it will be available?
Thank you for the question. We plan to have the full pit report out. We were targeting this week, but it may fall into next week. So it will be within the next couple of weeks.
And just to take one of the questions out of order, but seems to fit with that one. Your website on the dashboard and the sources in the staff report had a point in time count early in the year of just over 3,000 people. But since that was produced, the dashboard says that 2,700 people were moved into housing in the first 9 months of 2022 and 1,800 in the last 3 months. So that adds up to 4,500 people, like you said earlier, but only 3,000 were listed as homeless in the point in time count.
So I don't have the staff report that you're referring to know which particular dashboard you're looking at. There is, it may be that it's the unsheltered is the 3,000 number that you're looking at. But again, that data will be out in the next week or so.
There's an interactive math on the Joint Office website about shelters in the region. 4 adult shelters east of I-205, one of which is on 181st, but none east of 181st. So what are the plans to address the lack of shelter in our 4-city region? And then in addition to that question is, we know that House District 49 Representative Hudson was able to secure about $2.9 million from the legislature for Cultivate Initiatives to run a job training hub with some shelter and wraparound services, and just to get an idea on how we're progressing with finding where inside of House District 49, and hopefully not the narrow slice of East Portland, that center will be relocated or located.
So on the pieces around shelter, as I mentioned in my presentation, we have a site that we're in due diligence on for an East County congregate shelter that also could serve as potentially some day center space and co-location of other types of services. Once that is secure, we will let folks know more specifically what that is, but that's an active real estate transaction. The second one was a request for some alternative shelter capacity. And again, as I mentioned in my presentation, that's something that piece of land that is actively being pursued by my shelter development team. Regarding the question about Cultivate Initiative, that is not a joint office project. So I'm not sure, Taylor, if you can answer that question or you want to send follow-up on it.
Taylor, a follow-up would be fine. I mean, we've had meetings with both the representative and Cultivate Initiatives that indicated that the county had involvement in that project. So if you want to just tell us what that involvement is later, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I can talk really briefly. It's quick. We were supportive of their legislative ask last session. I just got an update from Caleb. It sounds like he and Cultivate are looking right now at a couple of different locations and might be pursuing one in particular. So there is a movement on that, but nothing solid yet. And as for county involvement, we've been supportive of the work, but that's about as far as our involvement has gone with that.
Okay, thank you.
Can I follow up here with just the question that the mayor asked there, that third bullet on the site? Shannon, you were mentioned that you're in negotiations, and so I'm not asking for a specific location, but the intent of that question is to get shelters out east of at least 200, of I-205, but it may be 122nd, et cetera. Can you talk generally about if this is going to be sites that people east of 181st could walk to or generally get to those sites?
It is definitely not a site that is in kind of East Portland. This is East County. And if there's issues with the site, your city manager actually is aware of the specific site. So if there's further concern, then that hasn't been raised in our check-ins, and that would be helpful to hear as we're, like I said, in due diligence where we expect to close on that site shortly. The alternative shelter site is not in a process of due diligence. We're continuing to try to identify sites. And so the team is looking again at sites that will be accessible to folks that are not in that kind of inner or East Portland section. It's really about something out towards, to your point, past 181st.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
If I could just jump in, I'm really heartened to hear that that folks are interested in having shelters in their communities. It's, to be honest, it's not a phrase I often hear. So I'm really excited about that. And I would just offer up too, if you all who are experts in your community know of sites that you think would be helpful, if you could send those addresses to me and to Shannon, to Taylor, and any of us, then we can have our team go out and look. And we have an assessment that we do looking at transportation options, size of facility. We have a list of criteria. But if you know of places that are either for sale or for lease that are that you think would be appropriate for your community, please send us those. We are always looking for additional sites, either empty vacant land that we could use for the tiny home villages, a safe park site where people can put their cars or RVs, or a facility that we could use for congregate shelter, even a motel. We've been purchasing those so people can have individual rooms.
Thank you.
We do, and we have most recently about a 4-acre plot that's for lease in East County. And I think what I would ask for you is that when we send that information, we get some follow-up on if you've actually reached out to the owners of the property to get a look at it to see if it meets the criteria and if there's a chance that you might lease it.
Does that sound familiar? A 4-acre piece of property?
It was just sent over through Stegman's office about 2 weeks ago, so it may not have traversed through all the right and proper channels. That was going to be a follow-up. Like I said, we do meet monthly, so we always, that's I think our first question is status on shelters and potential other locations. So we always get that update first. And to Shannon's question about the the site that they're doing their due diligence on without giving away things, it is in Gresham. So I think I can be safe to say Gresham proper. So, accessible. I think, there's probably some transit options, if you're from here to do walk there, you could. So it's certainly not, 122nd.
Okay.
205.
All right, thank you.
According to the navigators, about 250 homeless people that live outside of the city of Gresham in our East County cities. So I might remind people that Gresham is not Wood Village, Troutdale, or Fairview either, just like Portland. Last year, there were no shelters in the area for wintertime and severe weather. If the school hadn't been closed for a few days, there wouldn't have been anything east of 181st. Is there a plan for finding a severe weather shelter location in East County that can be open longer than school's winter break?
There aren't plans for specific winter shelter this year. We generally have had, we've had a lot of increase in winter shelters we've converted to year round this year. But for severe weather, I think, again, to the chair's point, if there's locations that are on your all's radar that you think are available and would be helpful, that would be great. I think one of the things that always prevents us from having additional severe weather sites is staffing. And so I'd love to continue to have a conversation about how and if staffing can be supported by Wood Village, Troutdale, all of our East County cities as well, just like we do with the city of Portland for the sites located here.
Well, since we're talking about staffing, I'll go down the list a little bit onto another question. The joint office went from 45 FTE in fiscal 21 to 96 FTE in the newest budget. As an entity that doesn't provide direct services, what are the primary roles of these people and the 17 million or an average of 177K per person in personnel services?
I don't know that Shannon's going to be able to go through, sorry if I cut you off, Shannon, go through the whole list of every job that each person has in that office, but I can tell you that is a heavy lift to distribute $250 million to oversee multiple providers, to run contracts, HR. And the joint office has moved from an ancillary team under the chair's direction to an entire county department. So that has been the growth of the staff. We're happy to send you a list of the staff job titles, but we don't have that information off the top of our head right now.
Sure, no, that's fine. And then just another thing to put in on shelter, even if we don't have land, we contribute, for instance, at the last warm or, the cooling center, Wood Village donated 220 cans of soda and water and bottles of water to Cultivate Initiatives to run the one at 181st. Again, the magic deadline where the world ends. So next question is, we see a number of people living in RVs, trailers, and vehicles. What are the plans for safe parking and living site for those people? Is it going to be similar to what we're seeing in Clark County, which appears to be relatively successful? And then a addition to the staff report is we've heard rumor that some people at the joint office have said that they don't consider people living in cars or motorhome, or that they consider people living in cars and motorhomes to actually be sheltered. So I'd like your opinion on that, and then on the safe parking sites.
So on the safe parking sites, we certainly hope that folks will model after the site in Clark County. That's where we've taken providers who have been interested in pursuing operating a safe park site. So hopefully that's our goal. We're looking to open our first one through the City of Portland's SRV planning, but there's additional sites that we're pursuing as Multnomah County to add some additional safe park sites. There hasn't been a specific request for safe park. Again, the sites that were outlined for East County investments were a shelter site and then an alternative shelter site. That very well could be a safe park if that's seen as the higher need than an alternative kind of pod shelter. So that'll be a part of what we can discuss as we continue to move through the planning for those sites. The piece around one, I don't want to subscribe or give any credence to rumors, to just name that upfront. The other piece is sheltered and unsheltered homelessness is very explicitly prescribed by HUD. Those who are sleeping in cars and RVs are not considered sheltered. They are considered unsheltered, and that is how they are counted in our point in time counts.
Thank you. And then we were recently made aware that the joint office has significantly reduced its supply center capacity. We were told by those that are doing the work on the ground that the supplies help build relationship, trust, and can be a motivating factor in getting people off the streets and into service. What's the process for outreach, and what data was used to support the decision of cutting their resources?
So to be clear, it was the supply center has been historically was just for severe weather supplies. So I want to just clarify that before COVID, it had just been severe weather supplies that the joint office was able to support folks on. During COVID, because there was additional funds from the federal government in ARPA dollars, the supply center was able to expand and add additional types of supplies so that people could use that during outreach. If you'll remember, there was explicit call outs to not be moving folks along who were in camps, but to have them kind of shelter in place and provide some support and services to them. As the COVID-19 dollars from the federal government wane, and I've shared the specific numbers that I don't have off the top of my head, I think we went from about a little over 3 million to about 1 million for these supplies. So that's why the supplies have been limited from weekly pickups to monthly pickups. I will also just emphasize that the navigation team in particular that's focused on East County is a new team. So they've never had access above what they are provided right now and what is the new norm due to those shifts in budget.
With all due respect, Shannon, we were told that by them that they had socks, tents, tarps. There were other things on the list, and now they're told that they'll only get tents and tarps, and that they'll get them at fewer prescribed times. And you know, there's also a $250 million bond out there, and $1 million is a lot of money when you want to buy socks. I know I just bought 132 pairs for the Hope Team for $179, and Commissioner Stegman's office is pledged to meet that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mayor. And I just, when you say them, if you could be more clear on who you mean by them. I would say it does take
The them was the navigators themselves.
Okay. Yeah, it does take it's going to take all of us working together. So I really appreciate that you're also out there contributing soda and socks and whatever your budget allows. I think it's going to take all of us. It can't just be up to one entity. So I very much appreciate the work that you're doing.
Well, we thank you for that, but we kind of need to get back to a point where tents and tarps a couple times a month is what we're providing, because that doesn't do the work. And it's not what the navigators are telling you that they need in order to do the work or to gain the trust of the people. In fact, the most important thing on the list for the navigators and the homeless people are the socks.
Mayor, I've been an outreach worker. I'm well aware of the pieces that are needed to support people and engage on the street. And the reality is that going from a weekly pickup to a monthly pickup is where we are. And the providers can continue to talk with us, but they're not our only providers. And so folks have been engaged. And again, outside of severe weather, where we'll continue to have specific severe weather gear, whether it's heat or cold events, those will never be impacted. That's a specific separate budget, but the ongoing supply budget has been significantly cut. And we're doing what we can with what we have to ensure that there's equitable access across the community to those supplies.
Well, thank you for that. But once again, with all due respect, I would remind you that they're not your only navigators, but they are our only homeless. And we need to serve them exactly the way we served our home people. And if that's to go out there and provide socks and let them believe that there's a promise that socks are coming, then we need to buy some damn socks. Okay, so I've already asked that question.
Sir, I've responded to that question as well. Thank you.
In fiscal year 2022, Joe's allegedly served 35,000 people in their homeless prevention program. Could you tell us more about these programs? What are they? What's the scope and scale? And if we're just going to I can save you some time if we're just going to talk about paying people's utility bills in an effort to keep them from being homeless. Because our city alone has paid over $250,000 in people's utility bills, including over $100,000 to PGE. So if that's part of the 35,000 you serve, I'd skip over that.
Prevention, the homeless prevention dollars go to rent assistance primarily. So this is folks who, and the numbers are large over the past couple of years due to the economic impacts of COVID. Again, as you all are well aware. So that is data that is about prevention from rent by providing rent assistance. So to keep them from falling into homelessness.
And there's been a number of less than optimal news stories and ads about advertisements about Joe's over the past 6 months. And so what are the plans to address the concerns that are raised in these stories, specifically ones like the infestations where people are waking up with bugs on them in shelters?
I think you probably, as well as anybody, know that the news these days is more often focused on trying to turn up stories of that create conflict or show problems without talking about the stories that are of success in our communities. So I'm not going to go through and address every single one of Willamette Week's negative stories about me or about the Joint Office over the past 6 months or 8 years that I've been in office. But I will say this, that we stand by our numbers. 4,500 people put in permanent housing last year alone. Is remarkable, and my hat is off to the employees of the Joint Office and to our contractors and our partners in the community who are working very hard every day out on the street to ensure that people don't end up homeless by providing the rent assistance that Shannon just referred to, all the way to working with families once and individuals once they have become homeless, to get them back into permanent housing just as quickly as possible. The gamut of the services that we provide is large, and we have had many positive and successful stories recently. We can talk about the Move In Multnomah campaign. Happy to send, Taylor can send you links to the videos that we've just put out with some success stories from people who were recently homeless and have become housed thanks to partnerships that we have with landlords all across the county, not just in Portland.
Sure. No, I'm familiar with the program. Cultivate Initiative has been able to use it extensively. And just personally to you, I've oftentimes praised the work that you've done and the attitude that you have towards shelter being as important as homes, because I think all the transitional stuff that we put into force is going to have to be permanent because housing doesn't go away. But it's a much more negative story for the people that woke up with bugs on them than it is for the politicians that were criticized.
Yeah, bed bugs is a problem in our community. We have a team at the Multnomah County Health Department who's been working with bed bug infestation for years. Once they come in through people's clothing or come in through furniture that's donated, it's nearly impossible to get rid of. We have in the Bud Clark Commons, which is located in downtown Portland, they have a whole room that they created that you bring your belongings in there and they zap it with heat. It's a long and arduous process to get rid of bed bugs. So I don't doubt that there are many people in our community, both housed and unhoused, who are suffering from bed bugs.
And then, it's, I really enjoy the fact that you have a periodic meeting with our city managers, regardless of how well or not well it's attended sometimes. And really regardless of whether or not the needs that nobody is better to propose to you about East County necessarily are met. But they have bosses. And so I want to insist that there be at least a quarterly or twice a year meeting with the mayors or councils at whom those managers serve at the pleasure of.
We're happy to do that. I know that we have had frequent communication, for example, during COVID on issues related to COVID. And knowing that this is an issue that's at the top of your radar, we're happy to have more frequent meetings at the at the elected level. I know that you all need to have information so that you can answer the needs and concerns of your constituents, and I'm happy to do that.
And that's, and by the way, the homeless are our constituent. We firmly believe that in Wood Village. But we also have a question about our homed constituents as well. And that's what should we be telling people when they say that Joe's has $250 million, but RVs are still on my street and people are still living in unsheltered areas.
I tell them this is not a problem that's going to be solved overnight. This has been an issue that's been in the making for 40 years as the federal government has heavily disinvested by 80% actually over the past 40 years in the creation of affordable housing. We just received a briefing today from Metro and from Echo Northwest. I'll have Taylor send you the link to that, to our board briefing this morning. It was very informative. Shannon talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but the rate by which the rate of inflation and the rate of rent increases have made it such that it is impossible for people who are working at even minimum wage and even higher to afford a place to live right now. So as fast as the Joint Office is working and is with as much urgency and a sense of determination to solve this problem as that we have at Multnomah County, the fact of the matter is that more people are falling into homelessness each day more quickly than we can get people out of homelessness. So it is something that is a struggle that we are going to be working on for just as long as it takes to get people back into housing. And that's why we put such a heavy investment also in rent assistance so that we keep people from becoming homeless in the first place, which is actually the most cost effective and the most humane thing to do.
Absolutely. You know, you're right about that. And we don't blame you guys for the rent increases. We blame the legislature for allowing the highest increases to exist on the oldest properties. Where the hell did they think the endangered people lived in the first place? And then finally, you know, a couple hundred cans of soda or 100 pairs of socks might seem humorous, but we've also spent thousands of dollars employing Cultivate Initiative to do groundskeeping work in our city. In fact, we brought them so much work that they had to turn it down because we were overwhelming them. And we have turned in areas that might be purchased or leased. One of them was even a hotel. And the only report what we got was that you didn't find a welcome buyer. And I'm not saying that's a lie, but it's pretty nebulous. And we know the owner pretty well. And we offered to be involved in the negotiations and we were rebuffed. But how can we aid in the mission and helping of the Joint Office in serving the homeless people?
So I think a couple of things is, one, nothing's laughable. Anybody giving what you can to help people who are most vulnerable is always important. And I definitely don't think anybody laughed, and please don't take that away. This is something that the investments made, whether it's socks, whether it's one bottle of water, whether it's treating somebody with the basic human dignity and respect that they deserve, that all matters. The other piece is I can't really speak to transactions that happened or didn't happen before I was here. And I've said this a number of times in various settings. I'm happy to continue to get places from you all that are coming up on your radar, but I can't really address prior engagement with any potential owners or sellers. So I, again, can definitely continue to look at and work with my shelter development team as they're looking at properties moving forward, but I can't continue to try to address things that happened, frankly, before I was here.
No, I appreciate that. And I 100% appreciate all of you being here. You know, if I'm my usual sort of belligerent self, it's because I help to serve 250 homeless people that are seemingly being ignored. You know, I know you don't want to address rumors, but I want to close on one more. And that is that, you know, and we've heard it from people that are also boots on the ground, that their notion is that all they're going to receive from the Joint Office really going forward is the Gresham allotment and the navigators assigned to the HOPE team.
So I think I showed in my presentation that that's not the case. There's additional dollars that, again, are not only for emergency sheltering, but also intentional naming that we have to be able to have housing placement dollars so that folks can move out of those. Again, want to highlight the Willow Tree project that is also providing supportive housing to folks. I think there was some questions before maybe the staff report was put together, but around housing development. And I hope that you will continue to have those conversations with Metro and Home Forward and the folks who do the actual housing development to ensure that you all have places that people can actually afford that are rent regulated for the long term. And we'll continue to be partners in a lot of those projects as we do when we're trying to cite and stand up permanent supportive housing programs. But again, there's never been the intention that it's just Gresham. I know that it clearly feels that way. I hear that in how you framed a lot of your questions or comments tonight. And I will again reiterate that there has been and continues to be commitment in our work to engage with you all directly as we look at that assessment that is called for in our SHS implementation plan. And so what comes out of that will be what I believe can help inform investments in future fiscal years and ensure that we're providing the services both from the emergency shelter and outreach, but all the way up through PSH and that permanent supportive housing need.
Well, thank you for that. And like I said, thank you to all of you for being here. It's an honor to have both the chair and our commissioner. We really appreciate that. And we understand that you need to present at Troutdale tonight as well. And we wish you good luck with that presentation. Thank you.
And if I could just, again, I want to extend my thanks. And obviously, if you leave here with any one theme, it's East County is more than Gresham. So, but I think you've heard that enough to probably reinforce any of that. So thanks.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. All right. So next up then on our agenda this evening is ordinance 4-2022, building fees was set.
All of her, but most of her.
I'm going to share the screen anyway. As soon as I find it. Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for being here tonight.
Just happy to have you.
Yeah.
Just for you, Seth.
You're not from the joint office, so this should be easy.
That's because he showed up in person.
Yeah.
Did you get
We
the
need like a
questions?
2-minute break or something. Regroup.
What we have for you tonight is a hearing, a public hearing and an ordinance for increasing the building fees. We'll need to go ahead and open the public hearing for comment on proposed building fee increases.
Thank you, Seth. We'll open the public hearing.
A little bit of background. And this is going to be a very brief presentation because you saw this all as part of resolution 17-2022 back in July. This is an increase. We haven't increased our building fees since 2019. So in April of 2020, April of this year, Gresham increased their fees. Again, I believe they increased them also in 2020. So they've done 2 rate increases since the last time that we did. And so we worked with their staff to put together and our staff to try and align the fees so that the hourly rates that they're charging both to their customers and to us when they do work for us match what we're charging our customers. There's also some fee consolidation, which didn't have any revenue impact, and there was some increases in their electrical and plumbing. And since that's primarily driven by the building inspector work that they do, we wanted to make sure that we incorporated those costs because those are what they're passing on to us. So all that said, The overall cost increase probably keeps us up with inflation. Again, we haven't had one in 3 years, so even a 10 to 15% increase in our fees is probably just keeping us up to date with what we had there. So you guys approved that resolution. We submitted it to our building official. He reviewed it. He submitted it to the Building Codes Division in late September. Once Building Codes Division had it, they're beginning a 45-day review period during which we are required to hold a public hearing and pass the ordinance. So this is the public hearing. That is and this is the ordinance that we're presenting. So that's all of the presentation tonight. I checked with Greg, but we didn't have anyone sign up for testimony on this. Unless we have anyone in the audience that wants to talk about it, I believe we can.
Yeah, there's nothing written or nothing to present tonight, other than if anyone wants to talk it in the audience.
Go ahead and close then the public hearing and start with questions or comments with Seth, with Council President Nissen.
I have no questions.
No questions. Thanks for the thorough work and the theme of keeping us moving forward so we don't slide back and then have a big increase at some point down the road. So thanks.
Councilor Rios Campos.
No questions.
Councilor Amen. I would just say, looking at the staff report on the fiscal impact, that it actually comes out a little bit less than 10%. So that's good. It is in line inflation, and like Councilor Minor said, we're not providing some shocking increase in the future. Before we go over before I entertain the motion, we do so few ordinances, even in my 10-year career. This is where a vote has to be unanimous.
For a single reading, it would need to be unanimous. If it's not unanimous, we'd bring it back at your next meeting for the second vote.
All right. Thank you for that clarification, Greg. And I would then entertain a motion on ordinance 4-2022.
I move to approve ordinance 4-2022, updating the building fee schedule and setting an effective date.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Seth.
Thank you.
And next up is John with resolution 27-2022, board replacement on the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District Board.
You had it clicked on there earlier.
I did.
Yeah. Go ahead and click. Yeah.
I did.
It's that one. Oh.
We got there.
Counselors, tonight, hopefully everything's going okay. I'm here to present resolution 27-2020, the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District Initial Board Replacement. So with that, I'm going to give a little bit of background. So April 2020, you as a council appointed the Public Works Director, myself, as a member of the initial board. This was also the Senate passed a bill 431 ORS 550 creating the initial board. It was effective September 2019, and again it's called an initial temporary board, 17 members. So far to date, we've on the board did some policy making, current operations, background, and moving forward. Really talked about infrastructure, capital improvements, what that list looks like. Talked about annual budgets and establishing, moving forward and completing the task of the initial board. Part of that is establish rate structure, and that's kind of why we're here tonight. That is not my expertise. My expertise is more into infrastructure. Staff recommendation is that Seth Reeser, the finance director, is our in-house expert and can represent in a greater, better fashion than a public works director. And then the ultimate bottom line is the dissolution of the existing, I believe it's 4 districts within the urban flood safety boundary. So with that, there are alternatives. City council can appoint a city council member to the board.
Don't say that so enthusiastic.
Okay.
Just a little bit of bait.
Yeah.
Again, the staff recommendation is to recommend, appointing the finance director, Seth Reeser, to the initial board with his expertise in financing to better, support our customers with establishing that rate structure and his input, or do not make an appointment and surrender city participation, which I don't feel, and staff does not feel, that that is a recommendation, because we are here to support our citizens in Wood Village. With that, I would take any questions.
Council President Nixon?
No questions. Thanks, John.
Council Minor?
No. No what? No what? I have no question.
That's right. He's getting as far away from the volunteer. If the smoking lamp were lit, I think he'd be outside. Pyro?
No question.
Counselor Man? All right.
So this does support goal 6 and goal 7. And again, a staff recommendation to appoint that city council appoint Seth Reeser, finance director, to the initial board.
John, I would just say thank you for your service on this board, and we owe you big. And then I would, as long as Seth is willing. Yeah?
It was Seth.
All right. Okay, good. I'd entertain a motion then on resolution 27-2022.
I move to approve resolution 27-2022, appointing finance director Seth Reeser to the initial urban flood safety and water quality district board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nope.
Good luck.
Thank you.
For the board.
There we are. So the favorite is Seth to be in the urban flood safety water quality district board. You should ask for something better for Christmas.
But I think it may be worth it.
I just think it's really staff recommendation is moving forward.
A bunch of numbers.
Yeah.
Send him out there.
Right. Well, and quite honestly, where the numbers and Wood Village are involved, he's been quite an able defender in the past, places like BOAC. And so, and defense is what we need in this instance. All right. So next up, we stay with John for the Public Works Director's report.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, City Councilors. Here to present the October 2022 Director's Report. As we get into heavy rains and storm, that's kind of been the focus the last 30 to 45 days, is just prepping our storm system for wintertime. A couple of the major projects going on. Well 3 has been a priority. This week, we have an electrician scheduled to get that back online. So they're going to replace the entire board and get that back online. Graffiti removal has been a big one the last couple of weeks. Our restroom has been vandalized at least 3 times. Police reports have been filed. Our city staff have been, diligent about removing or covering any of the graffiti. So on the downside is during that time, the restrooms are closed. So park visitors don't have access. So it's just unfortunate that we're having to deal with this now, especially in a time we were just talking about homelessness and houselessness and folks needing facilities. But our staff, we are diligent and really, trying to expedite those services.
And it seems not just our restrooms. In talking with folks from Fairview, it sounds like it's the same person or group doing it along, kind of the two city. I don't know. They may be hitting Troutdale. We just haven't heard that, but it's not just us.
And is staff like capturing whatever they're doing and kind of handing it off
Photos, yeah.
to
Yes.
the police?
So we are taking photos and filing police reports.
And you got, I know Greg, you mentioned cameras on the outside, and so the two cities are sharing information back and forth. What do we?
There was a typo in Donald Robertson Park.
I see it.
Okay, anyway,
Stole the T.
Okay, well,
And since this has happened multiple times, has the sheriff's mentioned anything of maybe finding out who it could be, or if this is,
It
further related to
It
something
kind of goes
else?
to their detectives unit, and they detect things and try to keep things under wraps so you don't try to spoil the investigation or otherwise. What we're told is it went to their detective units, it goes there, and then they do track it based on those unique tags that are unique. Some of them have been, I'll call it various scribblings, smiley faces or otherwise, but there's been some unique identifiers, and that's how we've been able to kind of see that it's also happening in Fairview. Ours just gets removed.
thanks.
Other items we've worked on, 238th median maintenance. Reason why I bring that up is like, well, no big deal. It's routine maintenance. We collaborated with Multnomah County Roads and their connections with the inmate work crew to get that work completed.
So now with COVID kind of on the wane, where the inmate work crews are becoming a little bit more available for our
A little more available.
usage.
Yeah. So again, County Roads understands, our expectation. And so they were supportive with that. We provided traffic control and they provided the labor.
And I think it's important to point that out, that they provided that labor, because we've actually announced it out loud in city council meetings that we weren't going to pay for that labor ourselves anymore. That was part of one of the reasons was to go to Cultivate. And then, because, and now maybe to find a utility worker one whose emphasis is on the groundskeeping, because, we all know that, well, that saves the city a lot of money. Those are people that are being asked to do quite a lot of work for very little money. And so they were only here because the county hired them, not because we hired.
Yes. And the county was actually going to do some right of way maintenance along 238th anyway. So in conjunction with that, we got some maintenance completed.
Thanks for working with them and getting that and taking it done.
Yeah.
Code compliance, again, the cases went up. I think last month it was right around 25 cases. So we've almost doubled the cases. Eyes out within our 1 square mile. And we delivered our first revised notice for the couple of the legacy properties that we had discussed. So more to come on that. And as council will request, here is the fatality traffic report from Metro that is published monthly. That you can see that the numbers just don't, they're right around that, 15, 20 a month.
Yeah,
It's actually an agenda item at a muck tuck each month that is discussed, and how concerning it is for, pedestrian and bicycle safety.
yeah, it's not, the numbers aren't going down. They're going up. especially for pedestrians and bicycles, as John said.
Click on the slide.
There we go. Water consumption report, I want to apologize. The staff report, there was an error in the staff report. These are the correct numbers. It's pretty consistent with last year's 2020, 2021, pretty consistent with those numbers too. So you'll start seeing production and consumption gradually go down in the reports. And that's just due to, during the summer months is when you have your high production. So system loss is 10.38%. So we're not quite where we want to be. We want to be under that 10%, but we're getting there. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Council President Nissen.
I have no questions. Thanks, John.
Council Minor.
Yeah, let me just follow up on really some good news for East County and the work that TriMet has been doing in East County with numerous agencies. And I'm going to let Jairo say something about this because we had a presentation at the last MUCTUC. But one of the things TriMet has to do when they start making route changes is they don't have more money. What they have to do is eliminate routes. So in order to add routes, someplace in the Portland metropolitan area, there's been routes cut. And then they can begin pursuing additional services. And the second thing is, as they work through this, getting the buses, like every business, they're having troubles getting drivers. And if they find drivers that are willing to work, then it takes them, and I forgot how long, but it takes them a number of months before they're ready to go out and drive a bus. So, but Jairo, I know you've been pretty actively involved in some of the addition to these routes.
Yeah, so I serve on the Reimagine Safety for TriMet as part of this Play East and just kind of a voice for East County. So they reached out to me in hopes to get the word out on folks doing the survey. They had a few open houses scheduled already, but nothing closer than 148th. And so last night we, with 5 days, kind of to be able to put something together, we did a community open house with 22 people showing up last night. From 6 to 7:30. And again, these are just proposed projects from TriMet. And Councilor Minor said, to add services, they have to remove services. And so a lot of the services they are removing are on the west side, but it is something very beneficial for us out here in East County because they're proposing extending the line that currently goes from Gateway down Gleason to 181st. And so they're extending that one that actually go all the way down to Mount Hood Community College, running through the high school. So if we know that right now, the school district is also suffering from shortages of bus drivers, and that would be their primary form of transportation. And so there's kind of talking with the planner last night, there's kind of two options that he shared with me that we could do. He said we individually could take the survey and call out those specific lines and improvements that we are looking for out here, or as a city, we can submit something and call these projects out. And I think it's important that we call them out, that we need these immediately because this is a 5-year projection plan. And so the quicker or the urgency we can put behind it, I think the better. And I think that's something as a city, as council, we can go out into our community and ask these folks to take the surveys. Because again, if we don't support East County, everybody on the west side is going to support them. And so we have to, in some form or fashion, start looking at it a little selfishly and start looking at our benefit, because there's other great proposed projects heading north and south, connecting, Walmart to Cleveland Transit Center. So I think that's huge. And then another one on 200 and 201st from Sandy all the way to 181st and Powell. So kind of going through the Ruby Junction and really making them more having that more connectivity, east and west and north and south.
I know.
That survey, I took that survey and it's quick. And you just scroll down through the bus lines and tap it and that is, I'm glad you
Yeah,
reminded.
and it was in the weekly a couple weeks ago. I'm happy to put it in as a reminder for this Friday. And we did do a push on our social media and website.
And we have till the 31st, sorry, John. We have through till the 31st to submit those surveys. So there is some urgency behind this.
And so, did you identify, so the two north-souths that would give connectivity to trains? And then, Trip and the college? And so,
And then they're gonna make.
Were they going to
Halsey-
increase to every 15 minutes?
Exactly, it's gonna
was
be
proposed.
a high frequency area.
And that's Gleason,
And
I believe.
yeah, and then so bus, which I know it as bus 12, but is I think 98, that kind of goes down to 23rd, wraps around Halsey down this way, is actually going to continue down to 23rd and hit Sandy.
said hit Sandy.
Yeah, but with 238 Hogan getting its own route, we'll still have that connectivity to Walmart.
Good,
So
good.
And I'm pretty sure I got this right. The Sandy Boulevard too, there'd be a solid service. And I don't know if you had to transfer, but bus service from Troutdale all the way down to Colley Boulevard and beyond. So that was another, at least proposed extension.
Okay, so we're up to 6. So, Greg, then, would we do a motion or can we just give you a thumbs up to draft a letter in support of those 6 that goes out before the?
Yeah, just give the thumbs up and I can have the letter for Thursday for your signature, Mayor.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Greg, and
Thanks,
and
Ira.
thanks very much.
I would also just suggest kind of sharing that with our neighbors. Seeing if, they want to draft their own.
I'll write it and then they can just copy it.
Yeah, just 'cause again.
Or,
The more support we can
Yeah.
get behind
Yeah.
this, again, these are just proposed. And so the urgency behind it, talking with, homeless services and services, we'll need a connectivity to Gresham.
well, and we're always given this fairy tale notion that if 3 cities agree on something, then things will be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe what you do is instead of, drafting it for them to copy, you draft it and you ask them to add the logo.
As a 3 cities letter.
City
Yeah.
letter.
And this was on a muck tuck and we've talked about it, but I haven't done any heavy lifting on this, nor muck tuck has, but I know Hyro has been doing some heavy lifting on this. So thanks, Hyro.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Councilor Mend, I didn't ask if you had any questions, but he's already left. so.
I guess I can't ask.
Sure, go for it. Yep.
So do I have to state my name for the record?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
My name is Olivia Huerta. I live in Fairview. And any other info that I need to state for the record?
No, that's fine.
Okay. The first question was kind of a little further back when you guys first brought up this section of the meeting. So I don't know if I understood correctly, but did you all say that you would start you want to invest more in using Cultivate for labor, like with regards to landscaping or repairing it versus?
We had contracted with them and they were doing, essentially a little backstory is that Multnomah County has told us that they aren't going to maintain their rights of way in our city. That's why it was such a victory when John noted that they were actually out here working on a median. And so our citizens don't necessarily understand that it's a county-owned road or an ODOT-owned road or Wood Village-owned road. They just know that it's in Wood Village. So as a council, we decided that we were going to do the upkeep on those rights of way, Wood Village Boulevard and along Halsey. And we were hiring Cultivate for that. And then we mentioned earlier that we're looking at having a utility one worker whose emphasis is on groundskeeping because we had lost our groundskeeper. And we were also contracting with Cultivate to do work here in Donald L. Robertson Park. For instance, if it weren't dark right now and you could go out on the trail system, you would see that there's all brand new chips out there. There was a Cultivate team that spread all of those chips. And they were doing good work. But we had more work than they could handle. And it was sometimes keeping themselves a little bit from their mission. The joint office showed a slide where a big lot had been cleaned up. That was Cultivate. And often, from my meetings with Cultivate, I come to understand that they're asked to volunteer to do some of those things sometimes that the county doesn't actually pay them to do it. But yeah, we have a tight relationship with them. We were employing them and under contract, and then we do personal contributions to their efforts as well.
And I say that relationship, to say it didn't end, but the day-to-day work did, is that our needs outstrip their capacity. And so they approached us and said, we thought we could handle this. As we've done it, we're not there yet as an organization and workforce development, but we still use them for projects more in the wheelhouse. Like we have some just general land clearing. We have them come out and give a proposal, a bid on it. And we still have that connection with them. They're just on our day-to-day provider.
I mean, because they're certainly worthy of the support. They pay their workforce development people $20 an hour plus benefits.
Is this to kind of also, since you confirmed that you are contracting with Cultivate Initiatives, so does this mean that there's going to be a move away from using inmate labor?
Well, for us, there has been. As I mentioned, we took a motion. I can't remember what year. I think it was last year.
I think it's 2020, or is it 2020 or 2021 to not use the inmate work crew as a city.
Yeah.
The county still does on essentially county facilities, which happen to be in Wood Village.
Right. Okay.
We facilitate that to make sure it's successful.
Right.
But we don't directly contract with them.
So some of those one times that Greg is mentioning that we now contract with Cultivate Initiatives for, like blackberry bushes, chip spreading, limbing trees and hauling away brush, invasive plant removal, things like that. Those are things that inmate work crews used to do for us, but now it's Cultivate.
Well, and then my second question is actually for you, Hydro. With the TriMet issues, I did go. I asked a few questions at the open house last night, and one of them was in regards to the 21 bus line, which that runs through here. I think just past this area as well. It's actually the only bus stop in front of where my residence is in the village. A Fairview right across like the Fred Meyer Plaza. And I was wondering if anybody else has noticed this, but I mean, that line in particular, it's supposed to be every 30 minutes, but even then it's usually more like once an hour to 45 minutes at best. And I guess, and I really commend, this council for really emphasizing that, we're not Gresham, and, to get to a lot of these places that are, that really lead to, I guess, outlets to the other cities and then, to the metropolitan area, there's really that big barrier of, that one particular line only coming once an hour and really having to time it. And even, checking between Google and then the official TriMet app, it's pretty consistently late. And I know that that's, partially due to the shortages, but I'm wondering, how that might be addressed in the future, just because, I mean, it's like you can't walk. It's like 45 to 50 minutes. I've done it before just because when I've gotten off the max, usually that last part of the journey is what takes the longest for me. And there was just one time I decided to walk and it took me about 45 minutes to walk that 1.5 miles. And it's, for somebody who's housing insecure and they might be carrying stuff with them, I can't even imagine somebody doing that.
Well,
So I think
we're lucky to have Councilor Rios Campos as the advocate this time around because they actually did come out about 6 years ago with a list of prospective improvements, and one of them was called the E-line. And the E-line would have provided that north-south connectivity to a train from here. It would have been along 223rd, I believe, is where it was going to go. And like we are wanting to do, and like you saw us decide to do tonight, we have written letters to TriMet in mass, you know, supporting it unanimously on our council, the E-line, and they don't come anywhere close to adopting it.
Yeah, I don't believe any of the projects in that enhancement plan have been implemented. And in fact, when the rapid line was first developed, going from, I think it was, downtown Portland all the way to Mountain Community College, we were very supportive of that, understanding it was going to go all the way to the college. It then stopped well short of the college after it already put the support in.
You would have to walk from Cleveland to the college. Is over 2 miles.
Oh, my gosh.
Or if you want to get a bus, I think the connections actually number in the teens to get from downtown Portland
To downtown Portland, it was, multiple connections
to Mountain Community College.
from Cleveland to the college. I think it was 2. So still not optimal, but.
Well, I think I kind of, this is the best opportunity to call that out. And so, when providing those comments, specifically request in the form of a demand, say we want this more of a frequent, because years past that was more of a frequent route. And so maybe they're looking at data of ridership and that with not having enough staffing and things of that nature. But if that's the consistent call from East County, I think, again, what we can do is specifically call those things we want out here and just have our neighbors and, electives kind of support that as well. But I think right now we have an opportunity.
And I'm happy to emphasize, the additions are great, and we also need to keep focus on reliability.
Exactly.
Luckily, things like the app have I'll call it improved at least notifications that my bus isn't here or not going to be here, because we've seen it on Halsey as well that, it's 30 minutes if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And another thing could be like, that we asked them that they ask us where we want the stops to actually happen. Because again, we're going to know the best places where we need these bus stops. Granted, they did a big project on Division with the FedEx, big mobile,
Right.
but they ended up removing stops because they wanted to consolidate everything to supposedly make it quicker. But now it's a burden for those that have that stop right outside their homes and that aren't having to walk 2 blocks to the actual stop.
Right.
So, if we, again, collectively push that, they could still ignore us, of course, but I think it'd be really hard.
Right. And I guess I wonder if the 98 is just going to still have the same, with their proposal, the same problem still of, even if it's meant to run faster, will it? Because if, those improvements aren't addressed. So so what else can, myself and other, layperson, just so write letters and.
I think right now
Anything
what the
else?
survey is our best bet. And so again, I don't think you're limited to how many surveys you can.
Okay. All right.
But again, I think the more we can get, by the rest of the community, I think is really going to enhance our ability. Because again, these are just proposed projects, so they'll make that final call. But when they have these open houses, is again, just go let them know of what we need out here.
On a bigger scale, what I will do is, because I sit on the East County Transportation Committee, this presentation will probably cycle back around. I'll be able to use your comments here tonight to emphasize just what we know. The service is fine, but if it's not consistent, then it doesn't work and you lose ridership. So I appreciate you your comments here tonight on bus route 21. I
Appreciate it.
I think it's converting to like 89 or 98 or something like that.
Not good with the bus numbers.
I looked at the map. I just got excited for what they were proposing for us.
It looks good.
It does.
It does.
Right.
And then again, I think this is something that we can bring up to the Main Street Sun Halsey Committee.
I was just thinking about that. I'll try to have the letter done tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we can actually bring it to the meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to add your logo to it as well?
Because again, looking at that project, that's totally gonna benefit making that more frequent. And then again, that is proposed. It doesn't mean it's that yet, so.
All right. Thank you for the great questions. We'll have the finance director's report with Seth.
Mr. Mayor, Council. Included in your packet tonight was the finance director's report for the period ended September 30th. I'll just hit a couple of highlights. Interest rate and interest revenue have continued to climb, and we can expect that trend will continue in the near future as the state's local government investment pool catches up with the federal funds rate, which seems to be escalating faster than the state can keep up with it. Of note on the revenues, I did want to mention, I went in and fixed the problem in the cells where some of them were not displaying the correct color. So that should all be working as intended. If not, I'm going to blame Greg for that.
I was the original programmer of that Excel file, so.
I will mention, if you look at the graphs for the individual funds that we're running a bit behind in our budget for personnel. That's not because we're understaffed. It is because we did budget for a contribution to the PERS site account this year. We have not made that yet because we wanted to wait, hopefully, until the stock market stopped dropping before we put our money in there. So we weren't riding the back end of the slide and we'd be getting the upswing of it. So we've been holding off on that and we'll hopefully make that in the next few months. And when we do, you'll see that we're now up, we would be above budget because that's a one-time payment of $300,000. Finally, this is the first month we've included the capital outlay tracking project. So all the projects that you approved in the adopted budget are now being listed by project and then totals for the month of what we've spent. So you can start to see some of these projects completing. So and these are as the invoices are paid. So even though the pavement preservation project wrapped up and was done, we haven't received the invoices yet. So you probably won't see that until October, until November's month report, looking back at October. So the only other thing update I'll have for finance is that just blanked out on what I was going to say. Oh, that's right. We will be submitting all of our documents to our auditors this week, and we do have them on your schedule for the December 12th meeting to come and present. So Councilor Minor stopped in and probably had a very spacey look on my face as I was trying to figure out what I needed to finish to get that wrapped up. So staff has been working on that, and we've been pulling quite a few people in to try and get that done a little earlier this year. So that is the update for finance. I'm available for any questions you guys might have.
Council President Nissen.
No questions. Thanks,
Councilor
Seth.
Meyer.
No questions.
Councilor Rios Campos.
No questions.
Councilor Mann. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you much.
And next up is our city manager's report with Greg.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Council's I've been quiet over there all night. So talk about, first thing I do want to mention, if you saw me texting over there, is actually with county staff about the presentation going on. It wasn't just, texting out of nothingness. It was with Taylor and Rebecca, and I have a meeting set up with them tomorrow morning to do a follow-up and get you all that information that was talked about this evening. So just get that on open now. I want to start with a quick APP update, hit the highlights. While we haven't quite launched or developed our community outreach strategy yet, we are launching a parks survey based on the Parks Commission meeting, the update you all had. So it's fairly targeted at, I'll call it capital priorities based off the master plan. There are a lot of projects we can do. There are always more needs than we have capacity for. So what does the community and park users say they want first? And we always, as always, have an option for other, because just doesn't mean we can't modify the plan if something's not in the plan. So Fest. In the November newsletter, we'll also have a little call out in the Pumpkin Fest packets, and it'll be in the weekly update. So hopefully you all can take that, share it, and then it's open through the end of the calendar year. So plenty of time to respond. And we are incentivizing people with gift cards.
Are you guys gonna put it up on the smart benches out here?
My guess is when we change them out, I believe we change them out next week.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, because like it is November next week. So yeah, next week. Because good place has park guests and park users see it. Hopefully they take that. Scrolling all the way down to the regional fire service discussion, just a quick recap of the 3 cities council meeting that took place last week. It seemed quite productive and meaningful, and just want to take this moment to just double check that the outcome you all had intended was essentially we craft a 3 cities committee looking at services with the priority being fire. And that is your intent and direction of me, correct? Perfect. That's what I thought. So I just wanted to ground truth that before I go harangue the other cities for not taking any action yet.
We talked about it. I think, try to keep it as small as possible.
Yeah, I think my first blush will be, just 3 members from each city, and then, councils can pick which they'll see where that goes. We'll just start it off that way. And connecting with the new sheriff, I did meet with Sheriff-elect Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell the other week, and it was a very pleasant conversation. She really values the partnership and relationship with the city, and she does plan to actually come here to address you all after she's sworn in, which is waiting till January. So sometimes when you're already elected early, they do an earlier transition. That's not the case here. It'll be in January where she's sworn in, and then plans to meet with the council. She did let me know, and it was made official in terms of the sheriff's office last week, and Lieutenant Hakala Captain Hakala will talk about it next month, but he is transitioning out of being our chief and will be head of their training division. So our new chief will be Lieutenant Jennifer Chubinashu, who you've met a couple of times. And my understanding is it should be a somewhat gradual transition, that Captain Hakala will still be in the picture as Jen's getting up to speed on kind of expectation, service levels, check-ins, and the variety. So I've been assured we will have continued quality service and a conduit to the sheriff's office.
Kind of how will that transition when would it be complete?
I don't know yet.
You don't know.
And I'm hoping that current Chief Hakala could talk about that more at your next meeting, since the intent is that public safety report not only go over the public safety report, but talk about that process. Moving down to the Main Street Sun Halsey work, TGM project is kicking off, and we are meeting tomorrow for Main Street Sun Halsey with the primary presentation on the TGM grant for the streetscape and street template, with the focus on the community outreach engagement component of that. The scope called it a project advisory committee, and with all the stakeholders that were listed as potentially would be good to have on it, 30 some odd people, which a committee does not make. So there's talks of maybe looking at it as more of a focus group session to get those unique voices, perspectives that help shape meaningful components. So we'd have the technical advisory committee, which is, I call it the techie, and then you have the non-techie, but they're users of the system kind of coming together to blend it. And so we're going to talk about that approach at the Main Streets meeting tomorrow, with the emphasis that the more outreach and engagement we do upfront in this process, the more likely, one, the county is willing to adopt whatever kind of alternative templates we have, and then makes it eligible for funding, whether it's through the regional transportation plan option funding or the newer Safe Streets for All funding. So the goal is, if we do our process right now, we will set ourselves up for success later.
Just a quick reminder to the council, I did step down as our member of that board. I'm the alternate now, and Councilor Rios Campos has joined that board as the full-time member. So thanks very much, and work hard to keep that the size of the advisory board as small as possible.
And I really like the idea was, so we have, as part of the grant, we have a public and outreach engagement firm. It was JLM, and it was their idea to maybe call it more of a focus group. And I thought that was brilliant. Yeah. So,
and make sure there's no non-tech people on the tech, and executive director of the whatever Eastern Biking Coalition and is not a tech person unless their professional job is engineer.
I think I said.
Yeah, we're keeping the focus on the non-tech, I mean, yeah, the non-techie. So techie is kind of set, which is a positive. And the other thing is there's been some calls for why isn't this more economic development? And we're kind of crafting actually, yes, it is economic development because we have our, our studies, our updated land use and planning. And now this is actually facilitating that Main Street, whichever that looks like to each community or section, to facilitate, whether it's easier to walk, bike, take transit, move people and goods. So it is economic development. So that's going to be reinforced as well to hopefully keep things focused on the project at hand. And then my last update on the APP is just on the tree planting. So as you're aware from the update last meeting about the parks meeting, the new set of trees we're going to plant just here on the western edge. The idea was this fall time, but this fall time turned into a weird fall time where it's very hot and dry and we kind of like moderate and wet for trees. So it might be pushed to spring just based on what the weather's been doing, but we will get trees planted on that strip there. So before I move on to all my other laundry list of items, anything else on the APP?
Questions at all for Greg on the annual performance plan?
When you're talking about the community engagement, when do you feel we'll pick that up as a whole thing?
I'm hoping just starting next month, starting to craft like an RFP to get to that first set of what we hope to get out of this process. Again, my thought is it's a targeted scientifically random survey where participants are already gifted something just because like you've been selected. The survey, here's blank for your participation. That's shown to actually get people to complete the form. And then, a random drawing for if you do complete it and turn in, you're entered to win a larger blank. But again, that's just part of the firm, but getting to those core set of questions first to help shape the process. I'm hoping the November-ish time and probably launch it after the new year. So shape it during the holidays and then launch it right afterwards when people are ready to do something again.
And then I know this is probably like, we'll have to wait till like the consultant says it, but what kind of a sample size are we looking for? Because just looking at, sometimes like just what Gresham did, they did a very small sample size when it was compared to their actual population.
So generally, if it's done well, 3 to 5% of your total population is a scientifically valid one. The caveat is done well and, randomized while making sure you're hitting the targeted areas of your city. So usually you do subsections and then randomizing within those subsections to making sure you're getting the broad spectrum. But generally, it was surprising to me, you need 3 to 5% is generally considered. That gets you that plus or minus, that 95% quartile. But yeah, city like Gresham, I would have suspected somewhere around 30 to 50,000 surveys to be 3 to 5%. For us, it's several hundred.
It was interesting just because, another thing, but they said they only did like a 4,000. And I was just like, that's not a big enough sample size, but that's them. So that's what I was just
Jim, correct. 100,000. Yeah, 4,000 would be up 4%. So actually, yeah, sorry, I added my numbers wrong. I'm not the numbers guy.
Wasn't going to correct you.
In front of the council meeting, he was going to correct me.
It's also 95% confidence in her, not quartile.
From the audience right now. All right, moving on before I blow this further. The meeting with the Confederate Tribes of the Grand Ronde this Thursday, it did a so-called change from, the meeting's still on at 11. That's the one where there's a virtual component, but they did arrange for tours around 9:45 starting at 10. I know Council President Nissen, you're not able to attend, so I just want to take this moment to see who would like to carpool, and then I'd be here at 7 a.m. We could leave here at 7 a.m. for anyone interested in carpooling.
I might be leaving from Southwest, so I might have to meet you there.
Okay, and that's fine. I just wanted to provide the option.
And the address is on here, right?
I will make sure everyone has the address because it was a little where we're meeting is not necessarily addressed.
Right.
Yeah, but it's their cultural interpretive center.
Be here by 7.
Yes.
And Greg, you remember, I know you. know that
You're
I'm
you're virtualing in at 11 and that link is good
Yes.
for that meeting, not the tour part.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to.
We can FaceTime you.
Doggone it, I'll let you guys tell me about it. Greg, are you done or I wanted to go back to the, I need to go back to the three cities.
Yes.
Okay. You sent out was it 2013 report that the consultant did on fire service. Okay. And I was looking that over. And it seems to me that report was very thorough as you look at it. I think we're going to need something like that. And I think it's important to get started on that. So in one of your first meetings, I hope there's agreement that whether it's that pattern of report, but that data needs to be available.
Yeah, there are several immediate next steps that should have been taken 6 to 12 months ago.
And I, spoke with someone who would presumably be one of the principals in the financial decisions, and he indicated that might have to find a different way to fund it than the last time in order for them to be able to play, because it may be too big a read
On
on a study like the Portland State study.
Yeah, it's a pretty
And
significant.
so
study.
we will have to think of that, because you're absolutely right. It's 100% necessary that we have that level of consultancy.
Yeah, we need 2023 numbers. But yeah, anyway, that's my point.
Yes, that is certainly the emphasis. Let me phrase that. My takeaway was that was the emphasis and focus of the immediate needs. Whether or not that's shared by the other cities, I cannot say, but I will certainly share our urgency.
Yeah. And now if you aren't done, you can go ahead and keep talking.
The other thing is just a reminder for those that have met with the Grand Ronde previously and you've been given the beads, to make sure you try to remember to wear your beads. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you will be gifted beads from the Grand Ronde. It's a ceremonial thing as gift giving. And I'll be bringing our Where the Heck Are Wood Village t-shirts for some of their members that may not have it or have worn theirs out as kind of the exchange of gifts. And
And have they had their elections yet?
I believe they have, yeah.
So we may meet some new board members. And just for Councilor Men, part of the bead ceremony, it's usually had been Councilor John George who made the necklaces. And he said basically the significance is that to them, that means that we're one of them now when we put that necklace on us. So.
So I'm going to talk about tolling next because we brought that up a previous meeting of maybe doing a full council report on, I just call it tolling, but it's that variety of 205 congestion pricing, the tolling projects, the area pricing strategies. That's still on hold as we know it. And we did get news, and you probably saw it on the news, that there's a group out of Clackamas County that got approval to start gathering signatures to put essentially that question on the ballot. So where this all sits in the scheme of ODOT's and our participation, I don't know, but I wanted to give you that update. We are on the list to receive, I think, about 4 technical reports. I think it's 4 or 5 that are coming out about this project. So we can use that again in updates to you. But at this time, they haven't given us an update on that updated timeline to be an active participant in that process. In terms of the Climate Friendly Eco Communities DLCD framework, you all said you wanted to join in on efforts to double check that. That's still progressing. Our cost share is $600. So it was based on general fund availability, and the cities behind that work it's ongoing. I think we should see some action in the next month or 2. We have Pumpkin Fest this Saturday for anyone that's able to attend and help out. We're asking for people to get here about 8:30 because the event starts at 10. So we know people will get here about 9:30, 9:45. So we want to be, I call it show ready at 9:30. So if you can get here, 8:30, we'll have most things staged, but help, set up pop-ups, bring the pumpkins around. It should be a great rainy, wet day. I do want to take a moment and talk about the workplace incident that I sent you an email on last week. It does seem like the employee is recovering well, and I'm meeting with risk management professionals tomorrow to really jumpstart our program again, our safety program. It was one of those, the more we dug in, the more holes we found and things we thought were occurring weren't. And so we just really want to take that proactive step and take measures that we thought were occurring and get those back occurring while still crafting a more robust program. So I just wanted to bring that up and see if there are any other questions about that, but you'll be briefed as we travel down this road and kickstart this program again. So I am meeting with professionals tomorrow that can help with that process. And then lastly, the plan is just to hold one council meeting for November. I know that will hurt some feelings, but the second one was scheduled for 2 days before Thanksgiving, and none of us are scheduled to be here. So we thought we would cancel the second meeting. So we have our November meeting and then the meeting in December. That was my laundry list of items. What questions do you have?
Council President Nissen.
I have no questions. Thanks, Greg.
Council Meyer.
No, and I didn't mean to interrupt you on your report, just because you paused. But I thought you were done reporting.
You are able to interrupt me at any time.
Well, Greg, I won't.
Unless we really don't like what you say.
Yeah.
Councilor Rios Cabos.
This is just because we're going to visit with them tomorrow. What are the plans to set up the nice gift that they gifted us?
So I'm hoping now that we'll be at their cultural center, the vision was to have the map of where their tribes had been in this region. So it puts context to their lands with because we have the plaque, we have the ore, and I thought in working with some of their staff that there was a map in progress. It turns out there wasn't. So hopefully going to their cultural center, we can get a copy of a map, a photo of a map, just to put everything into context. But it really turned out to be, if we don't get one, we're just going to put up what we have and, acknowledge that how we can.
Question. Thank you. Councilor Mann. Thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Jeff, do you have a city attorney's report?
I do not, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you very much. You guys gave a marvelous report on both the Muktuk and TriMet. Is there anything else that needs to be added there?
Not from a Muktuk, and I think we covered the TriMet.
Okay. Councilor Mann, you have anything on your mind that you want to make?
Hey, Mayor.
Hey, I'm not teasing when I say that, by the way. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it just, I saw the Outlook and there's a meeting here tomorrow on mental health.
Yep.
And did I miss that? Or did you guys catch me when I was dozing here?
No, you're perfectly welcome to come, by the way.
No, it's not that I'm offended at that. I'm gonna be out of town.
That's right. What do you know about mental health?
Well, but I just wanted to know, that I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
But did we announce it here?
Well, it's not a city created event. It's actually Olivia that created it. And then
that's fine. I don't need any information. I read it.
And we are going to meet tomorrow, and really the impetus of tomorrow is to come up with sort of a list of how we're being underserved, much like we discussed tonight, but with an emphasis on mental health.
Well,
and then how we can create a forum like the one we've done here on homelessness or on safe gun storage that is mental health.
Yeah, well, I read the article.
Yeah. So,
okay, so, but my point is, one, I think it's a great idea. I mean, we had gun storage, we had the mental health now and the homelessness. So I think these are good ideas to have in the communities, and I hope that Troutdale or Fairview is doing them. So I just commend the effort here on these sorts of outreach to individuals.
Thank you. So yeah, but I mean, anybody that's interested in coming and free, the meeting is here tomorrow. I'm gonna actually get here about 11:30 and
it's 12 to 1, right?
12 to 1. Yeah.
technical issues last time, so I'm going to be short. Planning on saying this? Evident from what I heard on kind of, I guess they're putting it on us to kind of had kind of an idea already of kind of find the spaces, find the resources and plan of action to them, because yes, they don't pass the but our three dire need of these services. Sadly, the kind of population validated. That's what this for. Very supported. I live in Fairview in some. This is a pretty friendly and proactive idea. Actually trying to solve homelessness crisis. That's not.
And I would just like to publicly thank Greg, because this was basically just thrown at his lap. And so I'll take responsibility for that. But again, like Olivia mentioned, this is her second time. The first time was done at the Food Cart Plaza, which is a nice space, but I don't think it's an appropriate space to be having these types of conversation, especially I'm going to go out there and say it during this time of election. You know, we have a lot of people showing up and wanting to hoorah, but not offering spaces to have these talks. And so I suggested doing it here, and I dropped the balls. But I think Greg for picking that up and just making this happen, and on such a short notice as well.
Well, again, I think it's really, I commend all of you that have put it together. And Olivia, nice to see you here again tonight. And thanks. Yeah.
I was, you know, and the reason it had been arranged. Originally, it was supposed to. I saw an opportunity because it was election time. Capitalized on that, and I got expecting more people now. Thing now, and it keep going. Get tomorrow, I'll be with them.
All right. Anyone else have anything for the good of the order of staff? We're adjourned.
Some note about